I want to thank all y'all for coming out today. You know you're a Texan when you use the phrase all y'all. So I've been here 8 years now. My name's Tyler Reef, and I run the sales team down here for Grand Endeavor Homes, all the way from just about Austin down through San Antonio. Obviously New Braunfels is our hub, but we'll go out as far west as Bernie and then out as far east as Cibolo and that area. So we've got a pretty good swath of area that we can cover. We have been around and been doing this for 37 years. I could be off by maybe 6 months or a year, but right around 37 years. So we really are excited to have you guys here. So let me tell you about, first of all, how this was sort of birthed. Going back about 2 months ago, we were in the final stages of preparing for a home that we were donating to a veteran. And in that process, I got thinking to myself, I was like, this is really cool. And the night before you actually give away the home and you have a big ceremony, you have an opportunity to go to a dinner. And at the dinner, all of the past recipients, and this is the Helping a Hero program that we were working with, and we've worked with in the past. This is our 7th home over the past 37 years that we've done this for. So you get to go to this dinner and talk with all these folks who've received homes. And I was just kind of astonished because it was a pretty awesome moment, pretty surreal, knowing that the next 24 hours you were giving away this home, and that whatever these folks experienced that were in the room with me at the time who had already received homes, they were gonna, the recipients of our home were gonna feel that same thing in just a few short hours. And so I asked a question, I was sitting down, I asked the question of a lady that had just received a home about 2 years ago, just south of here. And I said, what was it like when you sat in your living room after all of the hoopla had sort of died down, like the cameras weren't here anymore, nobody was there anymore, and you just sat there and you were like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is my house. And of course, there were some tears shed, but there was a moment there where I was just like, okay, like we can't give away all of our homes, right? But that would be a bad idea. In order to be able to continue to give away homes, right, we have to still continue to build and sell homes, right? But how do we do it in a way where we can empower the veteran community? So my first thought was, well, empowerment equals education. And so if we could just get in front of people, veterans, and be able to tell our story and show how easy it is or how easy it can be to not only just purchase a home, but build a custom dream home, then we're off to the right start. So I turned to Rocky Carter. Rocky's here with us today, and Rocky runs Core Values Realty, and he works almost exclusively with veterans. And so I said, Rocky, what are we missing, right? What do we have to focus on? What are the questions that people are asking? Because you're encountering veterans on a daily basis. Not that we don't, right? But Rocky's been doing this forever, and he's like, Tyler, we just need to come up with a way to show the path, right? To show that this is something that is easily attainable, and that it doesn't have to be this big clunky process, and that people don't need to settle. Their options are actually pretty limitless. So that brings us here today. So I want to thank you for coming in. And so we do a Build on Your Own Lot seminar almost yearly. But this one, while it's applicable to everybody who potentially might want to build a custom home, this one is geared towards veterans. And we're going to have Lori Lampert. Lori is one of our preferred lenders. She's wonderful, and she's been working with us for years and has wonderful VA loan programs. I'm going to stop there because that's about as dangerous as I can get when it comes to loan programs. And she's just so good at explaining what she has available for y'all and others that might, that are veterans and might be interested in building a home, that I'll let her speak to that. So, Trisha, what do we got next here? Everyone loves a good Will Ferrell joke. So, God, if I only had like a red spray tan on right now, just to like totally beat him right now. So, if you take all the programs for veterans and what it's like to build a custom home as a veteran, those different programs, and sort of just put them to the side for a second, right? One of the main things that we want to do today is make sure that this doesn't happen to you, okay? Trisha, if you can just flip to the next one. So today we're going to go over a bunch of things. This is sort of our schedule of events, and by all means, while we go through all of this, I want y'all to be able to feel comfortable to ask questions. I don't want this to be just me talking at you guys for 45 minutes and then we have questions. So if something comes up and you have a question or it sparks an idea, feel free to throw that at me and we can have a conversation about it. So a couple things, right? We're gonna go over choosing the right builder for you. We're gonna talk about how to select a home site. We're gonna talk about the role of a realtor, architectural design process. Lori's gonna swing up here. We're gonna talk about your financing options. And then we're gonna go through the fun stuff like proposals and contracts, permitting, construction, home warranty, and then what everybody's waiting for at the end is secrets and tips. All right, so let's dive right into choosing a builder. The best way to choose a builder is just start on Google, right? So we've got all these resources at our fingertips. Google's a great place to start. If you look and you see that a builder has 1 or 2 reviews, right? All that means is either maybe they're a newer builder, right? And it doesn't mean they're a bad builder, but it just means you might want to ask some more questions, right? If you see a builder that has 35 reviews and they're all 5 stars, you're probably off to a good start. There are a ton of different custom home builders that are in the market today. But you know, when you have a market cycle that goes like this, oftentimes, right, when times are riding high, there's a lot of new custom builders that we see enter the market. And so you just want to be empowered to sort of know what questions to ask to make sure that, you know, when you sign a contract with a custom home builder and you're sort of marrying that custom home builder to build your dream home for the next 12 months or so, that, you know, you feel confident in their ability to come through with the project in the way that you expect, on time, on budget, and in line with your expectation as far as design is concerned. How many years of experience do they have, right? So just another factor, and this is just a good question to ask in general, right? How long have you guys been doing this? And then, do your needs fit what the builder can produce, right? So we think about 3 different types of builders. We all kind of know what production builders are, right? If you're here today, production probably isn't the place that you guys want to be. But then there's semi-custom builders and there's custom builders. Within semi-custom, the range is pretty large, right? So some questions that you might want to ask are, when you say that you're semi-custom, does this mean that you have 10 base floor plans and I have 6 structural options that I can change? Maybe one of those structural options is one that, you know, allows you to design the perfect house for you, but maybe it doesn't, right? So when we talk about semi-custom, you might have that builder that is closer to a production builder, and then you might have a builder that has the capabilities where maybe they do start with 10 base floor plans, but you can do anything to them, right? So you can move ceilings, you can move dining rooms, get rid of dining rooms, add to your patio, whatever it might be, so that you're actually starting to design a home as if you would, you know, as you want the home to be lived in and designed. And then you have custom, right? So what is fully custom? Simple answer to that is you can bring your own plan sets, they can build it, you can work with their architects, they can build it. You can make any modifications, you can draw a diagram on a napkin or find something on Pinterest and bring it to their architect, they can draw it for you and they can build it. Get references, or how many homes a year do you build, right? This is an important one, right? So if you're interviewing a builder and maybe they do 3 or 4 houses a year, it's probably okay if that builder, you know, maybe he's the guy you deal with up front. Maybe he's the construction manager. Maybe he also does all of the permitting and purchasing, right? So this is kind of a question around bandwidth. If you are interviewing that builder and he's doing 6 or 7 houses a year and wears all those hats, you might want to ask how that's going to affect your project, right? Because then we might have some timeline issues. We might have some overextension with that builder. So asking the right questions about how many houses you're building a year. It's also important because you may want to drive by those houses, right? If a builder says that, you know, he's been doing this for years. We had somebody walk in literally yesterday. We were sitting at that table over there. We were talking about a builder that they were potentially going to go under contract with. They were actually in an option period, and their inspector went out to the site. It was a finished, completed home. It was $1 million home. And the inspector looks at them halfway through this 4-hour inspection and goes, And they knew, because the list of items that were redlined, the issues that were found on the inspection were major issues. They backed out of that contract. Come to find out that this builder had only been in business for 6 months. And so this was their first home. And Tricia, what business was that builder in? Do you recall?
Prior to home building, they were, what is it?
I want to say engineering. Pharmaceutical. Yeah. Yep. So moral of the story there is barrier to entry to promote yourself or market yourself as a custom home builder is fairly low, right? You want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a situation where you've put down $25,000, $100,000, you're halfway through a build and it looks more like a barn dominium instead of a custom home build, right? So those are just some key questions to ask. And then there's builders that, we built 102 houses last year, right? So we're the largest custom home builder in Central Texas. And questions around builders of that size are, what does your company look like? How is it structured? How many construction managers do you have, right? Or do you have one construction manager on your project and they're also running 10 other projects? Or is it really like one construction manager and 4 or 5 or 6 max, right? Because that's kind of where you want to be in order to receive the level of attention that a custom build truly should have. How flexible are they on changes, right? So we all have Pinterest, we all have HGTV, right? These are all things that, as we're looking at custom home builds, we probably pay attention to a little bit more during that phase of our lives. So you want to make sure that as you're going through the build process that you have a firm understanding of, do I really need to get this thing, meaning the project, right, 100% where I need it to be by the time they put a shovel in the ground, because I can't make any changes, right? We're probably going to tell you to take away your HGTV anyway after we start building, but I can tell you this, is flexibility of a builder, right, really determines, or it's one of the determining factors in just how custom that builder is. There's a story from our team up north where an individual we were building for, we already had the house roughed in, we had walls up and everything, and they forgot that they needed another office. We built them another office. So, all these things come into play. Flexibility is a huge factor, and flexibility, I think, goes hand in hand with personalization. How personalized is the experience? And you're gonna know that kind of right off the bat, right? The attention that you receive in that initial interaction, those first few weeks, is likely gonna carry over throughout the build. What areas do they build in? This is a big one, right? So I had somebody walk in here, a couple from Florida about 5 weeks ago. And they came in and they were looking at houses in this area and they loved our model home in Georgetown. So they wanted to build our model home in Georgetown. They went up there, they checked it out twice. We're looking at lots down here, and he called me and he says, "Hey Tyler, I found this beautiful lot in Fredericksburg." And he was really excited about it, and I just said, I'm like, "Jim, look, I would love to build you a house, but I would be doing you a disservice if I was gonna build you a house in Fredericksburg. I'm glad you found a lot and I'm happy to recommend builders, but at the same time, right, we have a trade base, we have construction managers that just don't live close enough to Fredericksburg where the quality of your build, the attention that they're going to be able to spend on that particular project could very easily be jeopardized." So geography is really important. Another note on that, right, is let's say that you're building in North San Antonio. We have a few folks in North San Antonio right now, a few in Bulverde, right? What we try and do is sort of pair projects together with project superintendents, right? So a fair question to ask is, hey, I own my lot in North San Antonio. What projects do you have going on in that surrounding area, right? You kind of want to know, well, if we've got 2 projects in Bulverde, sort of almost in North San Antonio, that there's a superintendent that's working on construction that's fairly close to your project and can give it the attention that it deserves. So that's always a good question to ask. What are their processes, right? You should be able to, the me's of the world should be able to discuss pretty quickly what the processes are, right? Sort of what the flow is going to be from the moment that you walk into that builder from day one all the way to when we're gonna break ground. The individuals that will be involved. So is it just gonna be me? Am I gonna manage the whole project from the beginning to the end? Is there gonna be a handoff to your construction manager who's gonna take over at month 3 or month 4 at about the time that we take over construction, right? Why is that important? Well, again, it's if you're building a certain amount of houses a year, you want to know that the individual in charge of that particular portion of construction or the process isn't overloaded so much that the project's going to be affected. What's the average build time? Well, I'll tell you this, if it's 2 years, that's too long, right? And if it's 6 months, that's too short. So we're not in COVID anymore, so if a builder tells you, hey, we're still kind of recovering from COVID, that's not true. We're well past COVID. So, a general build time for a house that's probably in the 27 to less than 4,200 square foot-ish range should be under a year, right? I'm not talking about the planning process. The planning process, working with the architect, getting permits and stuff like that, that might take anywhere from 2.5 to 4 months, but shovel in the ground to the time that you get your keys, it could be anywhere from 9 to 12 months, right? So that's a very reasonable time frame. Now, if we get into Rocky and I are working on a house right now. We're up to, I think, like 5,200 square feet. It's a completely custom home. It's beautiful. But there are so many details in that house, just from cabinetry to shelving down to the 1/4 inch. That might be an 11-month build, right? That might be a 12-month build. So just having that conversation up front and knowing that you have confidence in your builder to be able to produce that in that timeline is super important. Different types of builders. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, right? I think that reputation precedes itself when it comes to custom builders in this area. There are several custom home builders where very quickly, within 5 minutes, you're going to be able to go online and see reviews and be able to read through them and get a general idea of what their capabilities are and the experiences that people are having with them and how the outcomes are turning out. So I would urge you not just to look and see what the actual review score is, but start to click within the reviews, right? And see what people are saying, because you might find out that a buyer says, Grand Endeavor Homes, great process, right? So we learn a little bit about process, right? The architect was super diligent in listening to our vision and was able to easily turn that vision into an actual plan. Everything went smoothly in the planning process. The construction manager and the construction process was smooth. You might even learn about the communication that is offered throughout the build, right? So when we hand off to the construction manager, and the construction manager, this is at Grand Endeavor, and the construction manager takes over, you have a portal that's on your phone and on the computer. That construction manager uploads photos twice a week with updates. And you have a two-way communication mechanism where you can communicate with the builder back and forth. You have their cell phone, of course, too, but some people like to have it all in one spot. So the use of technology, right, is also something, while we're building you a house, is a factor in the experience, right? All of your documents are uploaded into that portal. You have everything centrally located. So just things to think about. Smaller builders, right? You might want to ask about those capabilities. Do you have things like that? How am I going to be communicated with? Where can I find all of my documents? How easy do you make this build process for me, right? That's kind of where we're going. Financial position. It's been tough out there for a few builders lately. I don't know if you guys, have watched the news a little bit, but there's even a few that have landed in jumpsuits. So just, it's kind of, you think to yourself, you're like, that's really unbelievable, right? Because in a case up north, right, there's a builder knows how to build a great house. Like, there's no doubt about this, right? I want to differentiate. There are a lot of builders who know how to build a great house, but struggle with managing a business, right? And so a couple things, right, is we know that this is a capital intensive enterprise. We're talking about real estate and a ton of money that's outlined to make this all happen. So, builders, when things are flying and sales are moving and you can kind of sell anything, right? Like during COVID, no issues, right? Because there's always money coming in to pay what needs to go out. But when the coming in slows up a little bit and, the coming out kind of remains the same, we've seen builders get into trouble. So you can ask about their financial position. You can call their banks and ask, how long have you been doing business with XYZ builder? Are they a stable builder? Are they good to work with, right? These are all probing questions where I liken it to, you have a painting where the outline is drawn and you're just coloring in the pieces enough to sort of get an idea, am I really comfortable with this builder? And my grandfather always used to say to me, when in doubt, there is no doubt. And so I think that couldn't be more true in this situation. You work with a builder for, let's call it 2 to 4 months at the beginning before they break ground. In that period of time, it's okay to be a human, right? And feel emotion about a build, or to be scared that it's a huge purchase, or did we get the design right and things like that. But the moment that you start to feel or lose confidence in that builder's ability to build your home the way that you want it to be built within the timeline and along the quality standards that y'all have discussed, that's the moment that you should really start to worry. And so that's kind of the red flag. It's a gut check, right? Trisha, if you don't mind scrolling to the next. All right, red flag warning. So how do you not get burned? We don't want to see red flags, so let's talk about how we avoid them. Is communication punctual, right? The sales process with a custom home builder is that upfront 1 to 3 months, right? So the communication that you experience with that builder, just take note of it, right? Because just imagine once they have some of your money and they're building. I would say that you should expect that level of communication will be consistent throughout the build, if not get worse. So just look out for some red flags. Are the proposals accurate and detailed? I've seen proposals come across my desk that are 4 pages, and I've seen some that are 200 pages, right? Nobody needs a 4-page document when we're talking to $1 million or a $2 million, even a $650,000 build, right? We also don't need a 200-page document. So in a lot of scenarios, I'll actually show potential buyers what a proposal looks like so that they understand sort of how we get to pricing, how we line item things out. I've seen proposals where it's just, hey, here's the price. It's $750,000. Here's a general sketch of the house with a general square footage. Sign here. I can't stress this enough. Everything needs to be documented, right? Everything should be a line item. Everything that's changed, and this goes back to process, after you signed a contract with a builder, needs to be a change order. It needs to be something where you can point to on a piece of paper and say, I actually did want those, the 3 white oak shelves, right? And I know it's included in the price you gave me because it's right here on this piece of paper. We both signed it. Everything gets documented. Nothing gets missed, right? It's the gray area, especially in a custom build, because you have a lot of customization, right? So every individual that you build a home for has different specifications in their house. So making sure that those are documented correctly is super important. Do they have an office? We've seen custom home builders that maybe it used to be like an old painting van for a painting business they used to own. I wish I was kidding, but do they actually have a storefront where they have staff? Can you see, do they have a sign on that? These things are really good indicators of the stability of a company. And I call it the drive-bys, right? So you take a builder at their word, but also verify, right? So you can ask them, oh, okay, you're building some houses in Bulverde, for instance, right? Do you mind if we go and check those out? There might be some like guard gate issues in some of the communities we build in, but for the most part, right, at this particular moment, I could go and I could tell you guys, hey, we've got 10 houses under construction half a mile down the road. Like, we can go walk them, you can check them out, you can see that they actually exist. You can walk the home sites and see what they look like during construction, right? Because it's one thing to walk through a model home. It's a completely other thing to go and walk through a house that's in construction. I know we all know that. So is the bidding process smooth, timely, and comprehensive, right? I can say this to you. If there was a way that we could have somebody walk in the door and within an hour or 2 hours say, yep, that house is going to cost $1 million, we would have found it, right? But I can tell you this, is that it's a process that absolutely requires patience, and it does take some time and commitment on behalf of both parties, right? So I have heard of scenarios where builders, custom builders, are willing to give you an upfront price, but I'll tell you what that looks like, right? You come in, you go, hey, I want this 2,500 square foot house, and I want nice things in it. And I hear nice things a lot. What does that mean? What nice things to me is very different than nice things to Trisha or Lori, right? So everybody has a different definition of that. And I want to build it on this lot. Well, in order to present a price to somebody in that moment, you have to pad it, right? Like you have to think to yourself, well, I think that might come in at 670 to 640. We can do it for 800, right? So the issue with getting instant pricing like that is it really shouldn't be an option when you talk about custom building, right? You want a builder to go out to your lot, look at the lot, look at the topography, how many trees need to be cleared, what trees do you want to keep? Do you want to do any manipulating of the land to make the house sit the way you want it to? All of these things are line items on a budget, right? That we need to add up to be able to calculate a true cost to actually build that out. We need to know the house, right? So how big is the house? How tall are the walls, the ceiling? What type of windows are you using? Things like that, right? And then design. So what are your design preferences? And actually be able to go to a design center and look and touch and see the materials that you're actually looking to put in your home. That process, if you've done all three of those things, you're probably in good hands when it comes to a builder. And that process time-wise should take anywhere from, it can be done in a month, month and a half. Depends on the complexity of the process, but anywhere from, I would say, a month to 2.5 months. Online presence. So when it comes to custom building, right, and we've got John Durba here who does all of our digital content. We're so just blessed to have him. As houses complete, right, John goes in and he takes photos, and you'll see normally we have a sort of all of these homes scrolling on our screen here because that's a resource for buyers, right? A builder, let's call it 20 years ago, really just used to be sticks and bricks, right? Like, we're gonna build this house for you on this lot. But now in the digital age, there's a process that has been able to become more enhanced, right? And that's the process that you experience as a buyer, right? So if we can make it easier through a digital presence to give you inspirational ideas, to showcase different styles, right? Some builders, they might have one architect or one style that they gravitate to. Maybe it's farmhouse, right? But maybe you're looking for a modern transitional or, a Californian sort of Spanish style house, right? So the ability to utilize that builder's resources, internet, digital, et cetera, to see what they've done in the past, it really gives you an idea of their capabilities, right? And it can provide inspiration for the discussion on design. Are there past client testimonials and references? If any person walks in, potential buyer of a custom home, walks into a builder and asks for testimonials and the answer is no, or it's here's one or two, that's not enough, right? Any builder should, unless they're a new builder, right, and everything else checks out. We don't want to discount the ability of good builders who know how to run a business, who have just started a new company. They may very well do a really good job, right? But there needs to be some questioning around that. So you should be able to receive 5, 10 customer testimonials, especially if it's a company that has multiple Google reviews, has a presence online, has structures in place, and has been around for a certain amount of years. How many hats do they wear? So, we're firm believers that in the custom home building business that it's tough to do all of it, right? So we have really good builders that exist in the building business. We have really good purchasers and estimators. We have really good sales and client facing folks and mortgage folks, right? And realtors and all of this. And so, if it's a small builder that does 1 to 2 units, maybe 3 a year, maybe they can wear all of those hats. But as we get larger in scale above that number, you really want to see that there's a built out team that can really separate the division of duties and do them well. Trisha? Finding a home site. So this home site was actually given away. It's not the best home site, as you can see, right? So there are a ton of things that go into not just the building of the house, but considerations around the lot, right? I can't tell you how many times, right, we have a ton of buyers, maybe the max budget is $750,000 for a 3,000 square foot house, right? That's doable. Like that, you can have a very beautiful house at that level, but the lot can't look like that, right? So your builder should be willing to go out to your home site, even before you purchase it. I tell people, don't come to me if you've got like 20 lots that you're looking at. But if you have 2 or 3 lots and they're kind of your finalist, and you've kind of got an idea of the design or the build, right? At least square footage wise, right? That allows me as the builder to go out there and say, okay, I know it's a 3,700 square foot house. It's probably around 85 by 80 in dimension, right? We can go out to the lot with you. You can describe the vision of where you want the house placement, other considerations like, do you want a pool in the future, right? Do you have kids and you're concerned about a sloped driveway or a foundation that might be 14 feet off the ground? All of these things are important factors when you're looking at the potential purchase of a home site. Now, if you already own your home site, same situation applies, right? To have a builder be able to go out and look at your piece of land before you build or design the house with the architect is critical, right? Because you can design the house to accommodate the topography or to accommodate the challenges that might be on a specific lot, instead of trying to fit a house that might already be designed onto a lot. So you've got all these things to consider, right? Topography, that's gonna affect costs with foundation and driveways and house placement. Easements and encroachments, right? One of the first things I tell people to do, realtors or buyers who might come in if they're interested in a lot, is, hey, do you have the survey for me to look at, right? If I have a survey, I can see, even without reading sort of CCRs and HOA documents and things like that, I can see the buildable area, right? I can see the topography on a topography map. A lot of times there's even tree surveys where we can see if there's big trees and things like that. And we can actually, without even going out to the lot, scale a house onto a lot to see sort of the orientation of how that house is gonna fit on the lot, how far you'll be from your neighbors, how far from your property line, maybe how much room you might have for a pool in the future, things like that. Floodplain and drainage. So when I think floodplain, right, there's a lot of public resources that are out there, like FEMA flood maps, where you'll be able to see, you pull up an address and you're able to see if your lot is on a 100-year floodplain or a 500-year floodplain. It's okay if a portion of your lot is in a floodplain, right? We just need to know about it because it's a non-buildable area. Or if we're gonna build on that lot, we might wanna move some topography around a little bit to make sure that water drains towards that area. There's also other considerations where you might have a development site plan that dictates an area that isn't in a FEMA floodplain, but instead it's an area for runoff and drainage where you can't build on as well. You might not find that on the FEMA floodplain, but your builder should be resourceful enough to go ahead and either contact the HOA, help you to find the CC&Rs, and even potentially contact the developer. If it's a builder that's been around for a while, you pretty much know all the developers and key people who are doing land stuff in the area. So there's a lot of resources there. Or, you've built a house in that area for a prior client and you already have all that information, right? So a couple things there to think about. Water versus well. So when it comes to a well, that's something where you either have public water in the street or you don't, right? So understanding sort of the implications of well depth, just being able to budget for that, right? It's tough to budget for a well. It's the hardest thing to budget for because you just don't know until they actually start drilling. You can look at houses in the area and sort of see how deep they had to go with the drilling, but that's one of those things where you set a pretty conservative allowance just to make sure that you're covered. And then we kind of hope and pray that it's exactly what it is. But you really want to try and make educated decisions around well. Septic and sewer, again, just sort of understanding what public utilities are in the ground, are easily accessible. Do we need to run certain things a certain distance to get to your lot? Usually that's an electric thing, right? So the power source, what power company are we working with? Are there certain like tap fees and things like that we need to be thinking about? Are there certain restrictions in the neighborhood where they dictate that we need to put up a pedestal for your electric meter that has a certain cost to it, right? Or can we put it on the house? All these things are sort of key elements of the design and the build. Future development. Quick story on this one. So the house that I've been talking to you guys about in North San Antonio, right? It might be one of the most beautiful subdivisions that I've ever seen in my life. The houses are absolutely gorgeous. Rocky knows this well. And we're working with a wonderful client and they're extremely excited about building on this lot. They've had it for a few years now. Well, what happened last year? they started building apartment buildings directly behind this subdivision in San Antonio, where there are literally, some of these houses are $4 million. So now they're into talking about all of those homeowners on that street, right? They're in a fight with their own HOA because those homeowners want a wall. And the greater HOA doesn't want to pay for it. So now they're fighting, one street against the rest of the HOA. A lot of this stuff can be avoided, right? So if you're able to look, and a builder can help you do this, right? If I see a piece of land and we're standing out there and you buy this piece of land, or you want to buy this piece of land because the view is just incredible. You can see 20 miles in any direction. I'm going to check, because if I know that that's that important to you, that you're going to potentially purchase that lot for your home, we kind of need to know what we're looking at, right? Like, what is that property that we're looking at zoned for right now? Is it in a municipality? Is it in county land? Is it one owner, right? Or is it 10-acre parcels? 10-acre parcels, great, because that's really hard to subdivide and have a tract builder come in and build on, right? But you just want to have as much information as possible to make an educated decision as big as this one. Heritage trees. This is one that I'm working on right now too. So there's a huge heritage tree. What's a heritage tree? It's a tree that you need, it's so big and beautiful. You look at it and you go, that's a special tree. We call those heritage trees. And they're just these enormous oak trees, and you can't build on top of them. You can't get rid of them. You have to build around them. So you want to make sure that if there's a tree in question, that your builder is able to work with you to understand the implications of having that tree on your lot. And then what do we do about it, right? Can we hack off a few limbs and be okay with that? Do we need to go and have HOA approval to do that sort of thing? Usually the answer is yes. Who's the HOA contact, right? When I think about a custom home builder, I think about somebody who is going to be there sort of holding your hand step by step, leading you through the entire build process. If it ever starts to not feel like that, that should probably be a concern or a red flag. HOA and restrictions, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but let's say that a lot of people will come and they go, Tyler, I've got this big boat, it's been in boat storage forever, right? Or I've got this RV and I really can't wait to have it on my lot. I'm gonna buy an acre lot so I can put it on my lot. Kinda, maybe, right? But we need to look into it. We need to check the CCRs for the development that you're looking at and just gain an understanding of what's permitted, right? So, for instance, right, like in certain subdivisions, you might not be able to have RV garages. So the garage height might not be able to be a certain height, right? But you might be able to have a boat garage as long as you have it not face the road or things like that, right? So you want to be aware of those things so that during the design process, it's at top of mind and you're planning around it. Small lots versus large lots, well, kind of self-explanatory on that one. We just want to make sure that one isn't better than the other. It's just, what do you want to do on that lot, and can we make it happen on a specific size lot? I'm going to stop real quick and ask Trisha to get me another water. Does anybody have any questions right now? No questions? Okay.
What size is this lot?
This lot is about 1.5 acres. Yep, and this house is 3,706 square feet. Yep. That's a really good question, though. Yeah, go ahead, Rocky.
Question that goes along with that. So with this lot, does it go past that thing straight to?
It sure does. So this is just a piece of advice from me, and my personal advice is you might see a lot that's 2.5 acres, right? And then you might see a lot that's 1.5 acres. And you potentially, in your head, you might be like, hey, I'm only looking at 2+ acres. Well, the 1.5 acres might be completely buildable, somewhat flat, right? Have really nice oak trees, and the 2.5 or 3 acre lot that you're looking at, it just might be a treachery, right? Like slope like this, super gnarly. So acreage and size are something to consider, right? But at the same time, you also want to understand what's on that acreage, and a good builder will be able to go out there with you and sort of gain an understanding of what you're looking at. Farm and ranch, kind of self-explanatory there too. Really, the further that you go outside of a city, right, you kind of get rid of zoning, kind of get rid of a lot of permitting and stuff like that. Why is that good to know? You would think, right, that if you build a house on county land, that you still have to have all those same building inspections that you have within city limits. The answer is no, you don't. So we as a builder, right, and this is a good question to ask a builder, is, hey, do you still do those inspections? Do you have third-party inspectors that come out and check out all this stuff as if we were in the city, right? Do you go by 2023 International Building Code, right? Like, what does that even mean? So, like, the standards and then the quality checks that go into a build, especially on county land, which is most of the places that you're gonna find acre plus farm and ranch lots, things like that. You also wanna know, can I have my own inspections, right? Are you gonna give me a really hard time if my inspector comes in at slab and goes, hey man, that doesn't look right, right? I saw a picture yesterday of the rebar inside of a foundation, and the inspector took a picture. They had duct tape wrapped around the rebar. Well, International Building Code calls for a special type of waterproof tape that goes on that rebar. Now, I can tell you that inspector told me 50% of the time he sees duct tape. So now you've got rusting rebar as the duct tape, starts to erode over time, right? And these are all just little things that you want to look for and make sure that you have inspections available to you, that the builder is doing inspections and understand when they are. Pocket listings. These are kind of cool, right? Like, everybody likes a good pocket listing. Pocket listing makes me feel special when I have them, at least. So a good builder that's been around for a while, right? They've worked with a lot of buyers, and they've been in the various developments, and they kind of understand what's out there lot-wise, right? When you move into a situation, like we're in Vintage Oaks right now, right? The developer has 2 lots left to sell after almost 20 years. But we still have 400 plus lots that are owned by individual lot owners, and you see a lot of those for sale, right? You just really want to have a good idea of what's out there, and it's not always listed, right? But builders have people walking in and out of their doors all the time, and a lot of them are realtors, right? Who are really good realtors, who have clients who maybe they're just not going to build that house anymore. And if somebody paid the right price and they know what that price is, that they would sell off this beautiful 2-acre land, piece of land that's in Vintage Oaks that's flat. Happens all the time. Access to active listings in the MLS. A good realtor will do that for you, right? Set you up on a search for land. A lot of times if you come to me and you just know that you want to be in Vintage Oaks, right? Or you want to be within a 10-mile radius, I'm going to call somebody like Rocky and say, hey, I want you to meet this couple. They're really interested in XYZ. This is important to them. And then Rocky's on the job, right? Because we're really good at sticks and bricks, and we can really partner with the right people to make sure that those things are happening the way they should be. And so that's what we do in those scenarios, right? You just want to make sure that that builder is sort of dialed in with a really good supporting cast. Tax records, you just kind of want to see what's going on tax-wise, right? You don't want to move into a situation where comparable homes, once they're finished, are unaffordable, right? So a purchase price might be affordable for you, but then you look and you go, wow, the taxes are just crazy. But you don't know that until the house is finished necessarily, or you're far enough down in the process. Trisha? Plans. Okay, so does the builder have their own plans? Some do, some don't. I can tell you that between Matt and Jimmy are the me's of our North Division. We've probably got 600 or 700 different plans. So they could be one of the 13 homes that we have that are sort of, we call them just, it's a starting point, right? This being one of them, the Sweet Leaf that we're in right now. It could be a modification of a Sweet Leaf that has a media room on it and the bedroom's expanded to be larger, and just little things like that. When you walk in the door and you start sort of talking about your vision and what's important to you, my wheels are already turning, right? Like, oh, we did that plan for the parks last year, or we did that plan, like we did a modified willow that was kind of like a Sweet Leaf, right? Having those plans available to work off of is sometimes a really good resource. Now, There are tons of people though that, can you draw it from scratch? So the answer for us and a lot of other builders, right, if you're completely custom is yes, right? But if you are the type of person where maybe you've been drawing out your plan and sketching it for 2 years and that's the house you want to make sure that you're partnering with a builder that not only can do it, but can do it well, right? Could understand the intricacies of a drawing from multiple different architects and turn that into a reality. But also a builder that can understand the pricing ramifications or considerations for a custom plan, right? An architect draws a plan and they're sort of like an artist, right? At the end of the day though, where the rubber hits the road cost-wise, you want a builder to be able to say, it looks like you're gonna be sort of in range with your price target, but you might be on the high end. So then you can decide, is that plan the right plan for me? Do we really wanna move forward with this plan and then be at the top of our budget? Or do we wanna scale some things back that might not be as important? So knowing all that stuff up front is really important. Sketch. So is there a process in place where you're able to fairly easily get a sketch? So just a general idea, floor plan, dimensions, where the rooms are, windows, ceiling heights, and then you move on to the exterior elevation, right? Just a rendering of the elevation, where there's stone, what the roof lines look like, what the windows look like, so that you in a short period of time, in the first month to 5 weeks, can really see the plan and also what it's gonna look like. Or is that something that you aren't able to see for 3 or 4 months, right? I would argue that if it's a 3 or 4 month situation, if it's not easy to get a sketch with a builder, that should be a reason for a red flag. Final plan. So is there a process in place and is it very clearly outlined how you move from sketch and exterior elevation to final plans, right? What does that look like? Is it easy to understand? The answer should be yes. Site plan, future buildings, pool, landscaping. This is totally personal preference, right? We can be turnkey for anybody, right? So there are people who walk in that door and they say, Tyler, I'm the CEO of Tyco. Like I don't have time to do any of that stuff, right? I want my pool. This is how I want it to be. Here's a picture of it. I want a 5,000 square foot house, and I want it to look like this, and I want it to be on a 10-acre lot. I already have my idea on which lot it is. I'd like you to go look at it. I want you to do my landscaping, and I don't want my foundation to be more than 6 feet high. Okay, cool, I got it, we're good, right? And we can include all those items as line items in the proposal. So you know exactly how we got there, what's included, and then you don't have to worry about it. Now there are other buyers, right, who say, I know a landscaper, I've seen their work before, we're just gonna do it afterwards. And that's totally cool too. The only other consideration is, does the builder have a team that works with the HOAs and can understand how to read the CCRs and interpret them for the specific lot you might be looking at, to know, does a landscaping plan need to be submitted within a certain period of time before you can get the okay to actually build your plan in that development? Does the house need a metal roof? Do you need to have a rock wall that's 6 feet high that goes across 6 feet to mask trash cans if you want to have them inside? These are outside. These are all little things, right? Little nuances that a good builder has a team in place to be able to understand, research, and then let you know about so you can make decisions off of that. Lori? Take us home. No. Ladies and gentlemen, Lori Lampert.
All right. Hi, I'm Lori. I have been with First American Mortgage for 28 years. My company's been in business approximately 32 years. And what's really interesting is that the founder of this account was actually my very first account 28 years ago. So we've got a very long history. I understand all the inner workings, of their business and my business, which really helps to make the process much smoother for you all as we're kind of going down this conveyor belt. Now, have any of you built a custom home before and had a construction loan? You have. Okay, did you do a VA construction loan? Are you a veteran? Okay, got it. So we've got different types of loans that are available to you. A lot of it depends on basically what box you're going to fit in when it comes to qualifying. We've got what's called a two-time close, which I have not been doing a lot of those here recently because there are some other options when you qualify. But the two-time close means that we go into a bank, we place your construction loan, then when your home is completed, you're refinanced into your permanent loan. What's become more prevalent over the last few years with the interest rate environment is a product that's called a one-time close. So for our veterans that fit into the one-time close box, we've got a great product. You can do basically a construction loan, 100% financing. The VA does not permit you to make mortgage payments during the build time, so we have to roll in the interest for your loan. They do not permit you to pay your property taxes as well. And so what happens is we have to calculate, we estimate, here's the price of the home, calculate what we think your interest payments are going to be and what your property tax bill is going to be. That gets rolled into this contract build price. So when the VA appraiser gets the contract, he sees that we have all of these things. The other thing that we do in addition is we are required to roll in a 10% contingency fund. What that means, let's suppose the home is $700,000. The VA requires that we add an additional $70,000 for any type of unforeseen change orders or even change orders. You know, you might go to Deco, now, and in 3 months from now, you have second thoughts and you want hardwood floors, say, instead of luxury vinyl. What happens is because we have this contingency built into your loan, it allows you to draw from those funds because the VA does not want our veterans to have to make any payments, of any sort while this home is being built to make the transition very easy for them. With the one-time close, we lock you in on an interest rate. Right now, the VA one-time closes are in the 7s, which is basically where market is, currently if you were going to be buying a home, non-VA. And at the end of the build time, as you are getting ready to once the builder's taken the final draw, and you all have your keys in hand, everything has happened, the bank sets up what's called a modification process. And what the modification process is where you come out of that construction loan, the home is done, and it's time for you to start making mortgage payments. At that point in time, they check to see what is the current rate for their VA product. So presently, the rates on VAs have been 5 3/4 to 6 1/4, depending on loan size, credit score, whatever. So the beauty of that product is that you don't have any cash out of pocket during the build time, and then when the home is complete, you're automatically going to modify into this permanent loan at whatever that current market interest rate is. And of course that's provided, that everything is in good standing at that time, but there shouldn't be any reason for it not to be because the bank is making your payments. They're basically drawing that out. As far as the other thing to know, which is good with this product, is that the bank vets the builder. So once a year, we have to submit the builder's financials, we have to submit their referrals, we have to, from trades, banking, as well as personal references. They also check their D&B rating. If it's a certain level, which this account is, they don't even go into the personal credit of, the partners. Yes?
I have a question. If somebody's doing this and they're VA, but they currently have a home and their entitlement is tied up, do they have to, at what point does the certificate of entitlement need to be available?
Good question. So everything is in the here and now. So we may have some people that don't have enough bonus entitlement to be able to carry both homes. And I've had some clients that said, like Rocky's got one, that he's going to sell the house, we're going to free up the entitlement. And for a number of reasons, he needs to sell it to qualify anyway, for the next home. But if we have a situation where we don't have enough entitlement and the client does not want to move twice, we may have to put them into a different category. So we may go to.
So at what point does that entitlement need to be available in the process? Like at the beginning?
Right before I close. So from the time that I get plans and specs, construction cost breakdown, it takes me 4 to 5, max 6 weeks from the time that I'm going to close and you're ready to break ground. So during that time, let's say a week before closing, I've got to have that entitlement freed up. Okay, so if somebody wants to say, all right, because I have several veterans that what we're doing is we're just kind of slow walking the mortgage process. We know they've got the lot, they've come to an agreement with Grand Endeavor, they've got a home that they're going to be selling, and I'm just moving down that conveyor belt. They're putting their house on the market, and we know that as soon as I'm able to secure the entitlement, we'll go ahead and close. But if it doesn't work out that way, there are other things we can do. If you qualify for both homes, we could do a conventional, which is just a conventional mortgage, a one-time close, or I can go sometimes to a bank, we can go to a local bank and do the construction loan and then refinance you into that VA loan. One of the things that really kind of trips people up is that with these construction loans, everything is in the here and now. So we have to have your funds to close if you're coming to closing with money. We have to make sure that you qualify in the here and now. If you don't want to sell your current home, we have to make sure that you have the ability to qualify with the current home as well as the new home. Okay, so that's one of the things. People are used to just going into a volume builder or into a builder. They put down their earnest money and say, see you later in a year. Well, you're not gonna see me later in a year if we do the one-time close. We're gonna close you right now, up front. I'm gonna be there in the end if you need me, but we close it and that's it. You modify at the end. The beauty of that, why I like the one-time close, is that number one, we're protected in the interest rate environment. If rates go up, people that we locked in a year ago, we just completed one up north, he locked in at 6.25, which we thought was high at the time. And that's current market with VA. He's not going to be able to modify it, you know what I'm saying, to a lower rate. But it does protect you from interest rates. The other thing is we're doing the appraisal right now up front, a year in advance. Should there be a decline in the market, we're just going back out and doing a final inspection saying that the builder has built this home according to the specs, okay, everything that they have presented to us. So you don't have to worry about potentially what happens if the house goes down. The other great thing is, let's suppose, heaven forbid, somebody loses their job during the build time. We're not going back around because we're done now. So if something happens, I had a client up north quit his job right after I closed his $2 million mortgage and decided he was going to start his own, I think he's like grinding stones or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, well, good thing. So, but it's fine because we're not looking back around. Now, have any of you had a VA loan that you have actually refinanced into an interest rate reduction loan? Are you familiar with that? Okay. So, an IRRRL, yes, yes. And so what happens, so we're going to build the house. We're going to modify you in a year from now. Hopefully rates are going to be lower. It doesn't cost anything, and away we go. Then you're going to sit and wait for a more opportune time to be able to do your refinance. Hopefully rates, we don't know how long it's going to take for them to get maybe into the 5s. I don't think we're going to see 2s and 3s again. I think that was kind of an anomaly. But with that interest rate reduction loan, the beauty of that, again, you don't qualify. Some banks are going to pull your mortgage history just to make sure you've made your payment on time for 12 months. They are not going to look at your bank statements. They're not going to ask for pay stubs, and they're not going to do a new appraisal. So you could pop up even in a, say, a declining market. Say you pay $800,000 for the home and it's only worth $750,000. It doesn't matter because the VA has already gone through all of these steps. So that's the beauty of this VA interest rate reduction loan in the end, if, you know, when the rates drop down. But back to, we talked about vetting of the builder. The other thing we do is we vet the project. So there's a third-party management company that actually takes the contract. They go through every single page of it, make sure that everything is in sync, because their job now is to protect the client and to protect the bank. Okay, so we're not protecting Grand Endeavor anymore. So they go through the budget and they run an analysis to make sure. They're saying this slab is going to cost $70,000. Are you kidding me? And looking at it, it's $120,000. So they run all the over-unders to make sure that the contract build price that you are given is pretty solid. Okay, to make that way you don't, you know, have potential shortfalls. Like Tyler was saying, I see people where I look at contracts and I'm like, wait a minute. You can't get hardwood floors for like $3.50 a floor because that's what, or a foot, that's what a lot of these builders do. So they put it through the project management to make sure that everything is in sync. Now, once we start building the home and the builder starts taking draws, what will happen, again, this is for your protection and for the bank's protection. A change order is sent from the home office to you, the client. You're going to look at it and go, okay, great, yes, my slab is there. Yes, they're framing. I'm in agreement with this. It gets sent to the third-party management company, and then a third-party inspector comes out. And they are not inspecting for quality, but they're making sure that what the builder is asking for is actually on the ground. And this is how we make sure that the money does not get ahead of the home. They're only allowed to draw for work as it's completed. Okay, so that is essentially how the process works. If you are not doing a VA one-time close because we have to do a conventional, say one-time close, the difference is that you will be making interest-only payments during the build time. So we have to prepare for that, especially if you're going to be carrying your current mortgage, say, now all of a sudden you've got this interest payment that you've also got to make, and you're going to be paying your property tax bill when that comes due. So we just want to make sure, I mean, usually when I start talking with a client about all of these options, our first phone call is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. Just really going through your situation. The last thing we want to do is get you into hot water to where we want this to be a good process for you. We don't want it to be stressful. And sometimes I'll have to say, listen, we might want to take a step back here. Have we thought about maybe, do we want to pay something off? Maybe should it take a little bit longer? So that's really the main differences with the products. Now, do any of you have any questions about the loan process? No.
Do you only deal with new builds?
No, I do resale as well. I mean, I'm a mortgage broker, so I work with probably 12 different investors. I offer everything. I started with a bank the first 90 days of my career, and actually when Jimmy Jacobs was my account, and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get in trouble if I'm working for a bank because you only have the bank's offerings. And what I didn't like was you have one set of underwriters, whereas for me, because I work with a number of banks, if I have a tricky file, I mean, I can literally call into a bank and get 3 different answers from 3 different underwriters. So for me, working as a broker was much more beneficial for my career back then because it allows me to basically offer anything that's out there. So I offer all the government products, the conventional products, and new construction, as well as somebody buying a new home or a resale. I guess that's it.
When they pull the 10% for overruns, and at the end you don't use it, does it come back off the loan?
Yes, it does. So in the end, what they do is we look at how much was the property tax bill, how much of the interest did we use, and that interest, they put a 15-20% cushion on it. So they're gonna look at what did we actually spend. And the one that we're closing up north that we're just about to modify, we had rolled in, I think the loan is gonna be, it modifies, almost $100,000 is going to come off because the client did not tap into the contingency budget. And we had also overestimated the interest because again, everything is gonna be padded just because the VA does not want the veteran to come out of pocket. So before the loan is modified, it's lowered, and then they recalculate the loan amount based on that lower amount and the new interest rate.
But you do or don't pay interest along the way if you don't?
Are you a veteran? Yeah, okay, you're a veteran. You do not pay interest along the way. It's being charged. Think about it.
That's fine, but it's charged against the...
Charged against the contract.
It's charged against the extra 10%.
Yes, well, no. We're gonna roll in 10%, which is a contingency budget for any type of unforeseen change orders, or you just decided to change and add an outdoor kitchen. There's your 3 components that are going to be added. It's the 10%, it's the interest carry, and then it's also the property tax bill.
If you're 100% disabled and you don't pay property taxes, will they not include that?
Here's how it works. Because you have to actually have a house on the property, excuse me, to qualify for the 100% disability rating, we are going to collect for property taxes on the unimproved portion, the unimproved land. It just depends. If the house gets done before the next tax period, then of course that's going to get refunded, go against the loan. But on the construction loan itself, on the VA, we do have to collect for the raw land.
And that's normally way less than...
Yes, significantly less. Okay, back at you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, again, thank you, Lori. We appreciate your expertise when it comes to loans. I know that, getting involved with Lori right at the beginning, if not before you even look at lots, before you even contact a home builder, the sooner the better, right? There are so many things when it comes to finances that are at play. The more you're able to plan to put yourself in the best situation financially before you build, the better. All right, let's talk about the fun stuff, proposals and contracts. So there's a couple different types of contracts that exist out there, right? Fixed price, obviously the best. You know what you're getting into, it's a fixed price. You don't have to worry about the price being hiked up on you 6 months later because somebody maybe forgot to calculate the foundation height or the foundation cost correctly, right? Cost plus, this one it's an interesting one, right? It's a scenario that sounds better than it actually is in person or in real life. So what a builder will do is they'll say, hey, look, it's gonna cost us, for each line item, right? It's gonna cost us $60,000. We have to pay the subcontractor for your foundation. And let's just say the builder makes 15 to 25% profit. They're gonna show you $60,000, tack on 15%. That's how much you're getting charged. The issue with cost plus, it sounds good, is that the incentives are misaligned, right? So what most folks aren't aware of, right, is we're constantly working with our vendors to see how we can reduce cost of materials and labor, right? And so if you go to a cost plus, there's no incentive whatsoever for that builder to do that. They just know it doesn't matter. They're making their 15%, their 15 or 20, 25%, whatever it might be per builder. So it doesn't really matter how much it costs them to build the house. They're just gonna hire whoever it is and pay whatever it is. So at the end of a build, you may have a price tag that is overinflated because those efficiencies aren't built, those natural efficiencies aren't built in for the builder to wanna reduce the cost of the build as much as possible. We even have situations where people come in my model home and they look at the tile and they go, that's a beautiful tile, right? They get to the design center, we price it out, and Kristen at our design center, she'll provide the cost and maybe it's too high for somebody's budget. She'll go back to her vendors and say, hey, this is the tile we're looking at. Do you have anything similar that I can get at a discounted rate right now, right? Those types of efficiencies make it so that cost plus could be something that's a little bit dangerous. Allowance based. So in a custom build, you're always gonna have to have some portion of the contract to be allowance based, right? And I'll just go back to that well example. There's no way that we know what a well is gonna cost, right, until the drill is actually in the ground. And so, we might look at a certain area and say, okay, we're gonna go down 420 feet in this area just based off of builds in the area, and the drilling company has done a bunch of work in that area and they can sort of attest to that. But if it comes in at 700 or 800, right, we just don't know that cost. So you create allowances for the unknowns because it is a custom build and we just don't know what we're working with on your lot in some scenarios when it comes to wells and stuff like that. The other thing with allowance based is this, is we're fixed costs for about 75% of the cost of the house, right? But allowance comes into play when we talk about your design options. And that's okay as long as you're able to actually see what you're getting in person when those allowances are created. So what I mean by that is this, is you can get into trouble with allowance based if a builder says to you, okay, we're gonna, just based off our conversations with you and showing you pictures maybe, right, we're gonna create a $150,000 design allowance for your house. That's kind of dangerous, right? Because if by the time you contract and then go to the actual design center and they show you what's included in the price, and it's the first time you're seeing that material and you go, oh no, like I need to upgrade to level 6. Well, what does that mean, right? Well, level 6, the builder knows what it means, right? But this is the first time you're finding out about it, and you might find out now that you're gonna be $250,000 in design options, right? But it was only allowance at 150. So now we get into a scenario where we have to tap into Lori's 10% contingency, right? You don't want to do that unless you have to, right? That should just be in case you change your mind at some point. Like you went through the process, you saw the materials, you created an allowance budget, and then you decided that you wanted to maybe, I don't know, add an outdoor grill and patio, right? Like that shouldn't be because there was a miscommunication or misstep in the process. So look out for that. We always send everybody to a preview appointment at our design center where you can see everything that's included in our base prices, right? We don't really have base prices, but what we consider to be included. And then you can see every level of upgrade. You choose the items that are of most interest to you, right? And so let's say there's 2 items that are of most interest when we're talking about kitchen countertops. We'll price both of those items, and have them be allowances as a line item in your proposal. And what's pretty cool about that is when we're going through the proposal, it allows us to have a discussion where you've seen all the materials and you have multiple things priced out, and we can sort of have a little fun with tweaking that to make sure that we stay at a target price that's in the range that you're looking to stay within, while still achieving what you're trying to do with the quality of the build. Detail, get everything in writing, right? We talked about this. Everything is a line item. Even the change orders should be documented. If it's as small as paint color, right? We want to make sure that we get that in a change order. Just keep in mind, right? There are customer-driven change orders, right? And then there are builder-driven change orders. So if you choose something at design and then all of a sudden maybe there's a material that's on back order, right? Neither you or us really, we don't want to wait 4 months or 5 months for that material to come in. We could send you back to the design center for a reselect, right? That's going to be a change. Anything that differs from the original contract and what is selected, change order, right? Now, the other question to ask of builders is, do you allow client-driven change orders, and is there a cost to it, right? So we do have a slight cost. It's a couple $100s if you do a change order, within reason though. So the first couple change orders, we're usually not charging that, right? It's a scenario where we're 50 change orders in, and now all of a sudden the entire scope of the project has changed, and you've met with our designer 6 times, and right, that's a scenario where that becomes an issue. There's always somebody in a situation to thank for those, right? But there's a level of reasonability that exists. Tour the design center up front. So we talked about that a little bit. Does that builder have a design center? Do they outsource it? The quality and materials of that design center, is that all you can choose is what's at that design center? Or is the builder actually able to source materials and items that you might like that maybe they don't have for you to see in person? The answer with us is yes, right? So I'm currently working with a buyer, and she loved this vent shroud, right? So that goes over the gas range. We didn't have it in our design center, but she sent me a picture and we sourced it for her, right? So there's a million ways that can go, and you want to make sure that, especially design-wise, that you know that you have the ability to choose what you want in your house to create the feel you're looking for. How much does the average client upgrade? This is an interesting one, right? So every builder is going to have what they call included features, right? And what's included for one builder might not be included for the other builder. And I'll use the example of doors, right? So 6'8" interior doors versus 8' interior doors. So remember, everything is a line item on a budget, right? So we include 8' interior doors, but at the same time, when you're talking about a custom build, it all shakes out in the end. So if a builder's starting at a 6'8" door, right, they're charging you for a 6'8" door. And that's included in the base price, right? So the base price might be a little higher if it's an 8' door, right? Versus you add the 8' door later, and then it gets to that price anyway, right? So I wouldn't be too concerned about the included features versus non-included features. You really want to see where you end up at the end and what that final price is. But to answer the question of average client upgrade, I would say on a 300 or 3,000 or 3,200 square foot house, people are spending about $150,000 in upgrades, okay? Escalation clause. Okay, so this originated during COVID, right? Did anybody here build during COVID or buy during COVID? Okay, you're lucky, that's good, that's good. You probably wouldn't be sitting here if you did.
We bought during COVID.
You guys bought, but the house was completed?
Yeah.
Good. So in about 30 days, we saw lumber prices increase from around $750 per 1,000-foot board, right? That's how they measure lumber. And it's publicly traded, so you can check the prices, to over $2,000 per 1,000-foot. So we had to make a decision as a company, what do we do, right? And so we ate about $3 million of lumber cost, right? So we honored those contracts, ate it, and it was a huge loss for us. And every builder needed to make that decision. Some builders went back even without an escalation clause, and they said to their clients, hey, we'll give you $5,000 to walk away from the contract, or $10,000 to walk away from the contract, or we're gonna modify it, and there's no choice, like that's what it is. We didn't do that, but as a result of that, because it happened so quickly and nobody expected it, almost every builder has an escalation clause, right? So what that is that ours is 10%, right? So in the initial budget, which your purchase contract is predicated off of, every line item, let's call it lumber, right? It might be $60,000. Well, if that lumber price for us increases by up to 10%, no big deal. We cover that first 10% of increases. You don't even know what happens. Let's say that lumber increased by 12%, right? We would still cover the first 10%, but you'd be responsible for the 2%.
What happens if it goes down?
It stays the same. I never heard that question before. Touche, my friend, touche. Yeah, so that's how that works, right? Just be cognizant of that, because there are certain builders that might have a 5%. I've seen a 5% as one that's widely used. And you know, the other question to ask is, if it exceeds that number, whatever it is for that builder, do you pay for all of it, right? So if it's 12% over and their threshold's 10, are you responsible for the 12, or does the builder still pick up the 10 that they agreed to? Permits. All right, so building is complicated, right? And the idea is this, is that if I could stress one thing, is if it feels too complicated when you're working with a custom home builder, it probably is. Like, we've been doing this for 37 years, and we've been able to create efficiencies and streamline the process. The idea is that we want to take as much off of your plate to make it enjoyable. So there are a lot of builders out there, they're not set up to do anything but literally build the structure of your house, right? You might need to hire somebody to do all the building permits, right? Your septic permits, your HOA approvals. You might need to find out who those people are and how to even do it, right? That can be extremely overwhelming. Your foundation design, is that a heritage tree? How do I deal with a heritage tree? Who do I go for approval if I need to get rid of one of the limbs to build my house? Your electrical and your water, right? Who's the electric company? How do I pay them the tap fee? When do we need electric at the site? Do we need to bring it up from a source that's 500 feet down the road? These are all really complicated things. We have a team in place that does all of that for you. You don't have to worry about doing any of that. But there are a lot of builders out there that they're not going to touch this stuff, right? They're going to rely on you to make the house site approvable to build on, with everything that needs to be brought up to the site and ready to go so they can build the house. So just understand that electrical and water, those are the two where we still want you to call the electric and the water company to put those things in your name, because when we put it in our name, we found that it tends to be more complicated and actually cause you more strife. But we are more than happy, and we do this all the time. We'll walk you through it. We'll get on the phone with them, make sure that we arrange it so that it's easy for you. Construction. All right, so let's just talk about, here's some music. It's one of my favorite songs. I'm just kidding. So all communication needs to go through the builder. You want to make sure that you know who your point of contact is at all times, right? So if the builder is doing a really good job of communicating, you're always going to know, right, that, okay, we've had our pre-construction meeting. That was a handoff from Tyler or from the builder rep who you dealt with at the beginning to the actual builder. At the custom level, the quality of builders should be phenomenal. Right? These should be individuals who have been in the industry for a long time with a track record of constructing phenomenal homes, but also being really excellent resources for buyers, right? So our builders, they take over that relationship, not only because they're excellent at doing that, but because they're the person you want to talk to, right? If you have a question about when a light fixture is going to come in, I don't know that answer, right? I would have to call our builder in order to get that answer and then relay it to you. So we cut out the middleman. We make sure that you have direct contact with the person who's building your house. Even at that point, if there's a change order, they're the person that you continue to work through. So just those clear lines with definition around who that person is important. Pre-construction meeting. So by the time we get to the pre-construction meeting, right, that's that handoff phase from the me of the world to the construction manager. That's an opportunity where all of the information is being transferred to that builder, right? They've already looked at your plans. They've looked at everything that they can research on paper to prepare for your build. They've already talked with me several times, right? They've already talked with our director of construction, who you've probably met at that point in time already and has been out to your lot with you and me. But this is that moment in time where it's your opportunity to say, hey, can I keep that rock as my address block, right? Can we go over where the pins are on the four corners of my lot, and how far is that tree gonna be from my master bedroom? All those little details are conveyed in that handoff, and you're still gonna miss things, but the process should be designed to where you then can pick up the phone and have direct contact with the builder, and whether it be 10 minutes later or an hour later, you can get that question that sort of pops up into your head answered very quickly. Important meetings at different phases. We're gonna have meetings all the time, right? We like to have more meetings up front, because when you're doing custom, the more that you talk and communicate at the beginning, before we put a shovel in the ground, the easier it is to get ahead of things, right? Once a slab is poured, like that office situation, you know, once that, and people just change their minds sometimes too, right? So that's one thing. But at the end of the day, right, you wanna make sure that you're being, you're meeting with everyone who's building your house a lot. And there's gonna be defined meetings. You can always request and set up a meeting whenever you want with your construction manager as well. And so let's just talk one more thing about this, is you're also gonna have your buyer walk, right? So house is coming to completion. We're gonna over communicate those timelines to you, not only because we just wanna talk to you guys all the time. At that point, we're pretty close, right? But you have other things going on in your life that you need to plan for, right? We need to make sure that Lori's looped in. She knows what's going on from a timeline perspective. Your housing situation that you're currently in, your movers, all these different things have huge impacts on your life. And there absolutely is a way to get this right. I've seen it done wrong a lot of times. There are a lot of situations where I've seen builders rush people, right? And they try and get a house done just so they can meet a certain deadline on a timeline. You wanna have those conversations with your builder up front and say, hey, if I have my builder walk, right, my blue tape walk, where I'm walking around and I'm you know, marking things up a couple weeks before closing, and you know, are you gonna make me close in 4 days after that, right? Or are you really gonna take your time and go through and make sure that I'm not gonna sign off and close on this house until I've walked it again, and that I'm comfortable with every single item being addressed, right? So these are really, really huge considerations, and it's really an opportunity to celebrate the house, right? When you get to the end of a build and you're doing that blue tape walk, the first important thing is this, is your builder probably already has 300 things marked anyway, right? So they're just as prideful about your build as you probably are in most scenarios. If it's a custom builder and you don't feel that sense of pride and workmanship, that's important to the person building your house, that's a red flag, right? That shouldn't be somebody who's in custom building. Warranty. So this is a house that we built 3 years ago. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding. This shouldn't happen, right, when you build a house, but things happen, right? So understanding the warranty that you're being provided by the builder is super important. Just note one thing, right? So 1 year builder warranty, this is gonna be like your car's bumper to bumper warranty, right? Anything and everything is gonna be covered under that warranty. So you live in the house for a year, then that expires. 2 year mechanical, this is gonna be everything in the walls, right? So plumbing, electrical wires, HVAC, like things like that, right? Now, not to be confused with the actual units themselves, right? So your HVAC unit, your appliances, things like that, right? You're gonna wanna call those companies and register for your warranties. You can even sign up for their extended warranties, things like that. Anything that we put in though in the walls that connects things in the house, that's gonna be covered in your mechanical. 10-year structural warranty. So this is gonna be support beams, foundation, right? Any issue with those things covered for 10 years. Keep in mind though, that the state of Texas did just change their laws about a year ago. They only require builders to actually have an 8-year structural warranty. So make sure you ask that question when you're interviewing builders, how long is your structural warranty? Joshua, we can flip to the next. Cool. All right, we saved the best for last. I hope you brought your reading glasses because we have tons of secrets and tips. And then we can open it up for questions. I'm actually gonna have Rocky come up and speak real quick as well. So secrets and tips. Build for your current lifestyle. I can't tell you how many times, it happens all the time. Somebody walks in and we're designing their house and they go, you know, I really want to have this ensuite because when my mom comes, right, I want to make sure that she has a family room set up and that her room is 16 by 18, almost as big as our master, and she has a lot of clothes, so we need to have a huge walk-in closet. The next question I ask is, how often does your mom come? Maybe once a year. Or, you know, we have no kids right now, but I want to make sure we have 4 extra bedrooms because we're going to have 4 kids. Not that I discount those things, right? But on average, people move here in Texas every 3 years. On average in America, people move every 7 years, right? So I think it's really critical when you're designing a house to make sure that you're focusing on the spaces that you and your family currently use while thoughtfully preparing for the future, right? Because everything has a cost implication. If budget's not an issue, totally cool, right? You choose everything and go from there. But build for your current lifestyle. Price per square foot. This is a good question because I get it all the time, right? So the thing about price per square foot is it's deceiving, right? So how do I answer that question, right? I might have a buyer who comes in and they ask me to source a custom gold faucet from Italy. That faucet might be $20,000. Well, my price per square foot just got blown out of the water, right? Without knowing the preferences of a buyer and going through the process of understanding that, taking that time, you really can't answer that question. Now, I'm absolutely willing to say, okay, like what are the ranges on average, right? Just so you can get an idea, right? We can build a house that's $175 a square foot, right? Is it gonna be the house that you walk in and you go, this is perfect? Maybe, it might be. We can also build a house that's, you know, $400 a square foot. So having those conversations around price per square foot you have to have those within context. And you have to know what you're dealing with from a lot perspective, right? Because the foundation and the site work has a whole lot to do with your budget. Somebody have a question? Big box builders versus custom. So we talked a little bit about this. I will say this is on the custom side, right? The bigger the custom home builder, the better their pricing normally. And the reason for that is economies of scale, right? If there's a builder who's building 2 houses a year and they're gonna order lumber from Builders First Source, you know, I'm building 102, right? I'm probably getting my lumber for $6, you know, a square foot. A lot less. So oftentimes, you know, you can save a lot of money by going with a larger builder, potentially, right? Because it doesn't always mean that money is passed on to you. But just know that, you know, when you look at pricing and things like that, the ability to become more nimble becomes more of an issue or more of a factor, right? The larger the builder gets, or less of a factor, sorry. Builders profit and markup. In general, builders probably make 15 to 25%, right? And why such a range? Well, the range really depends on 2 things. That builder might have it set in their mind, sort of, this is gonna be my profit margin and I can't go any lower. But the second and more important thing is the market, right? If we look at times during COVID and that sort of thing, right? There's so many buyers, like, right? The market's kind of flipped on its head. You move into tougher times, like right now, right? Not as many buyers, more competition. Just like anything else, the market takes over and kind of dictates where you need to be. Green building. When it comes to green building, the average house, not custom, right? The average production home has become 25% more efficient over the past 10 years. Just the base standard of what's included in a house. So if you've ever heard of LEED certification before, LEED certification, the requirements to be LEED certified, silver LEED certified, were over here 10 years ago. And the average build was over here. That gap has shrunk pretty considerably. But you know, you can do anything. We put spray foam insulation in the walls. You can do them in the ceilings. You can bump up to closed cell if you want. There's anything and everything, geothermal, et cetera, right? Those are all things that people are doing in their houses that we've done before that are options if they're important to you. Expectations of both parties. I think this has a lot to do with a lot of communication, having a proposal and a contract that's easy to understand but is still detailed and line items each item and their respective price. And then having design designated meetings and conversations with both parties so that everybody understands sort of where we are in the process and what's next. Don't get caught up in not included versus included. We kind of touched upon that, right? It could be deceiving, right? Still an important thing to know, but just know that that can change by the time that you get to the end and you get to a final price. You will forget to include things. Of course you will, because there are probably 200,000 items that go into your home, right? So the ability of a builder to be flexible, to allow for you to change things that you may have forgotten, their responsiveness in getting back to you in those first couple of weeks as you're interviewing builders, right? That's an indication of how good they're gonna be and how flexible they're gonna be in the process at allowing you to make changes on things you might have forgotten in the past. Just because it's talked about doesn't mean it's included. This goes back to line item stuff, right? So make sure that it's line itemed out, right? You wanna know how you're getting to that final price, and that way you can be nimble in sort of tweaking things if you need to get the target price of the house where you want it to be. Realtors and how they get paid. So we love our realtors. I mean, they are a huge resource for us, and they're an even bigger resource for buyers. So really good realtors, I can't even express, like, when it comes to pocket listings, when it comes to finding and doing a lot of the vetting for you, right? Like Rocky and his team, for instance, they've worked with Grand Endeavor, they've worked with other builders, they've worked with the small builders. So you can do all this research on Google, and you should. You can call the contractors and trades of a builder and say, hey, do they pay on time? Are they good to work with? Are they good people? Like, right, you can do all that, but a realtor is gonna know firsthand, a good realtor is gonna know firsthand what it was like, what the experience was like for their buyers, what they can and can't do. So utilize a good realtor as a resource. And trust your selections. So talked about taking away HGTV after you select everything. It's not a bad idea. You probably made good selections, like, you know, from the start, but you see things. You continue to look and see things. You know you're building a custom home. You've been to the design center. You've selected all your items. You're on budget. Sometimes you just have to trust that, right? And the last thing I'm gonna say is give yourself a little grace, right? So if you're the type of person, maybe you're an architect and engineer, right? And everything is very black and white, right? When it comes to building, there's gonna be things that happen. We might break a window during construction, and you might come by, you know, 3 times and look at that and go, oh my God, like, why is that window broken? Well, you know, like a slider might cost $10,000, and if one of the panels broken, we're gonna leave it broken until the end, as long as there's no adverse effects on letting weather into the house, right? Because we're gonna replace it once the contractors are out of the build, right? We don't want them to break it again. So give yourself a little grace. Just know that you've made a good choice once you've made a choice on a builder, and know that you're gonna be taken care of.